I want to welcome Kree, our host for today's live cast, and we also have two special guests with us, David and Carolyn from Microsoft, that support their SMB business. And today is going to be an exciting one. It's a continuation of what Kree and I spoke about last week, which was related to SMBs and the threats that the SMBs face and why SMBs don't really consider security as a priority and why they should. And today we're going to talk about solutions that Microsoft has to offer, across Defender for Endpoint, Tenant Hardening, Intune, and more importantly, also Microsoft Sentinel. So, I think this is going to be a great conversation. Carolyn and David, welcome. This is the first time we are meeting on a webinar, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation. So I'm going to pass it over to Kree, who's going to host us today.
Yeah, fantastic, and it's good to be here on this second part of our webinar, and welcome to you both. Last week, Amal and I had a fantastic discussion, and I'm sure that your expertise is going to serve us and this audience really well. And maybe before we kick off, if you could both just do a bit of an introduction in terms of yourselves, your expertise, so that our audience knows who you wonderful people are. Carolyn, we'll start with
Sure,
you.
sure thing. Hi, everyone. My name is Carolyn Cianciolo, and I am a PSS for SMB Security. So I'm a partner solution specialist, and I focus in the SMB space. So really focused a lot on the business premium conversation and those new add-ons that Microsoft launched back in September. So Purview and Defender. So that's really where my expertise lies. I love the SMB space. There's so much opportunity. There's so much opportunity in security. So excited to kind of really understand how we can better support you and kind of what are some of the myths and things that could help some of these SMB customers. So it's wonderful to meet you all. David?
I'm Dave Branscome. I'm based out of Raleigh, North Carolina. I'm a partner security architect, so I focus on Defender, Sentinel, Intune, Entra, Purview. Those are kind of the big ones that we're looking at today, and so happy to be here.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. And David, just taking a line from what you mentioned there, you mentioned a couple of parts of the Microsoft stack, and there may be parts of our audience that are thinking, wow, that's a lot of stuff. Microsoft security, like unpack that a little bit for us over here, and what do you mean by some of those products that you had just spoken to? Maybe you just want to share with the audience a little bit about each of those.
Yeah, no, that's a fair question. Microsoft does use names that don't necessarily indicate what you're talking about. So Intune is device management, so a way to manage like your laptops, your phones, and set the make sure that the applications that are supposed to be installed are, and that the settings are configured the way that they're supposed to be. So it's more of a configuration management tool. Entra is for identity, so how you log in, where you're allowed to log in from. Purview is for data security, making sure that the data is protected the way it should be. Sentinel is our SIM, so a log aggregation and alerting tool. And Defender is a protection tool. So it covers a large number of Microsoft tools, protecting your endpoint, protecting your email, protecting identities, applications, kind of you name it. It's doing that protection.
Amazing. Well, thank you for kind of setting the scene there. And you're absolutely right. Sometimes we name our products and they don't have a very literal translation into exactly what they do and provide. And one of the things in terms of this series that we're running here is security for $0, right? And there's so much that already comes packaged with Microsoft 365. But let's delve into that a little bit from a security standpoint, and tell us, like, how much of the technology that customers are buying today are they genuinely deploying and utilizing from a security standpoint?
Yeah, so I wouldn't be able to give an exact number, but I think it's safe to say that it is a majority issue. So most tenants that we work with, most SMB tenants, are running with default settings. They're not enforcing things like, or many of them are enforcing MFA, but rarely do we see device compliance. So technically, they have security, right? They have the tools, but it may not be enforced. So things like conditional access, like I said, device compliance, data
Retention.
protection, they have the tools, but they're not enforcing them.
Actually, sorry to interject there, but actually the number that I heard was 12.5% of
That's
small
probably fair.
businesses don't have, they have the features, but they haven't enabled or deployed the features. Because just because you have a license doesn't mean that you get the security, right? You got to onboard things, and I think that's it's good and bad, because from a Microsoft perspective, they don't by default turn it on. And the reason why they don't turn it on, and people ask me that all the time, right? Like when my people talk about why don't Microsoft turn it on, the reason is Microsoft works with a lot of legacy clients, and there's a story that I tell people where we were actually doing a tenant hardening project for one of our customers, and we did a massive analysis to make sure that there's nothing legacy that's actually hitting the tenant. And apparently, after the tenant hardening was done, apparently there was this Windows 7 computer that would only log in once every 3 weeks. That never appeared in our 2 weeks survey, right? So stuff like that, so that's why you don't. And then that was monitoring a very critical infrastructure for the client. So that's the reason why you don't by default just turn on things. You have to turn it on in phases for your clients, right? So yeah,
Well, thank you. I learned
yeah,
something there.
yeah.
And what an interesting story. Windows 7. Wow,
Windows 7, yeah,
that's a
yeah,
long
yeah. I mean,
time
we
ago.
come across that all the time. I'll tell you, it's crazy, right? So yeah,
Well, you mentioned something in there that I'd like to maybe shine a light on, which is this aspect of tenant hardening.
yeah,
For our audiences that may not be like technically
yeah,
savvy or sound,
yeah.
what does it actually mean? And what's the risk of not hardening this Microsoft environment?
David, Carolyn, or should I take that? Yeah, okay. I'll take that. Yeah. So by default, your Microsoft tenant comes in a I hate to use the word vanilla, but it's in with default settings, right? So you don't have your DLP enabled. In majority of the cases, until if your tenant is, I think, 5 years old, your tenant doesn't even have MFA enabled by default. Now it does, right? Microsoft made that change a couple of years ago, right? But it doesn't it doesn't have conditional access policies enabled, which are, I think, one of the more consequential security features that Microsoft has than anything else. It doesn't have retention policies enabled. It doesn't have PIM and PAM enabled. So what do all of these do? Like, your conditional access policies tell the tenant when to allow a certain user to log into that, to your Office 365, your emails, your SharePoint, your OneDrive. Like, there are conditions that you can set and say, if a user is coming from the United States, allow him. If the user is coming from a computer that I know, and we'll talk about Intune for that, but allow them. If the user is coming from a computer that is not registered with us, block them, right? That is a really great security feature that's very easy to enable, that people don't by default enable. Then there are retention policies, like how long do you want to store your data without it getting purged? That by default, I think it's, I don't know, 3 months, but you can extend it to forever, by the way. Then there
We're talking
are
about logging data.
log,
Not
and
just
yes,
not
that's right, right? Like your audit logging data and things like that as well. And then there are data loss prevention policies. So if you are a financial firm and you don't want people to just attach your financial statements and send it over an email, there are policies that you can enable using a template that are not enabled. So things like that, and
Mm,
many more, like privilege identity management. Your global administrator is always a global administrator unless you turn on PIM, where then the global administrator elevates themselves to becoming a global administrator, and in a couple of hours or 4 hours, whatever you said, that global admin privilege is revoked from them. So that user, if it ever gets breached, it's not breaching the global admin. It's breaching just a regular user, right? So things like that are not turned on. So when you turn these on, and God bless Microsoft. It's not a touch of a button where you turn these on. It's many different settings that you have to, go through. And as a result of that, there is a whole tenant hardening process that you have to follow, right? And once that's hardened, now you can start building the next phase of that. That's the first phase of your zero trust infrastructure, right? So hopefully I explained what tenant hardening is, in simple terms. But anything else you guys want to add to that I've missed, maybe?
No, I mean, it's the principle is really, instead of trusting everything by default, you put controls in place to make sure that the system is evaluating each user. Who are they? What's the device they're on? Is the behavior that they're performing expected? So it's the difference between open access to your tenant and a policy-driven, controlled access to the environment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic. Well, thank you guys for that and educating us on what tenant hardening actually is. So we've been talking about this, and all of this stuff like really sits at an organizational level. But there's something to be said for endpoints as well, right? Because from my understanding, and I'm not a security expert by any stretch of the imagination, that's typically where most of the breaches do occur, like at this endpoint level. And we've got something, as Microsoft called, Defender for Endpoint. And Carolyn, maybe I'm going to pass over to you, and maybe you can explain for our audience here, what is Defender for Endpoint, and why do you need it, and how does this differ from third-party antivirus tools?
Oops, I'm gonna actually let David take this one, and then I'll kind of chime in after.
Sure.
Sure. Yeah, so Defender for Endpoint is protection that lives on the endpoint, obviously, like a laptop, a desktop, a server. And most customers, if they're running Business Premium, they already have access to Defender for Business, which provides that antivirus and endpoint detection and response capability. The key difference that most customers don't realize is that means that they don't have to buy a third-party AV, right? They don't have to go out and buy Sentinel One or Sophos or whatever. They've already got it as part of Business Premium. So adding another AV tool usually duplicates prevention and can actually make response workflows a little more complicated. So the smarter move is to fully enable those EDR capabilities that are already part of the platform. So Defender for Endpoint has a number of controls in place. So of course we block known viruses that have signatures and things like that. But that's kind of old school, right? That's the way things used to be. Detection today means you have to look for suspicious behaviors. So things like an unusual process that's being executed. Is something dumping credentials out of memory? Is the attacker moving laterally between machines? And so a lot of that is driven by machine learning, right? We learn what the behavior looks like, and AI enhanced workflows. So we see this happening, we identify what the characteristics are, and we can go in and isolate the device. We can terminate the processes. We can remove the mechanisms that attackers put in place so that they can stay embedded in your system. We remove those so that isn't possible. So what's important is it's not operating in isolation, right? We're looking at signals from your identity. We're looking at signals from email. So if a device shows suspicious activity right after a risky type of login, a login that's coming from a country that the person never goes to, we connect that chain, right? And that's what allows us to detect and stop attacks that just traditional antivirus would miss entirely.
Okay. Wow.
Can I give an example? Because I love to talk in examples. So just a week ago, we had a client where we have the Defender deployed. We manage Defender and we act as their SOC as well. a HR person got a call, peer-to-peer Teams call. So someone just called her and said, "Hey, I'm calling from Dayforce," and she took the call because they had a ticket going on with Dayforce. So I'm calling from Dayforce, and I would like to take control and work on your whatever Dayforce instance or whatnot, right? And so she said, "Yeah, no problem. Let's do that." So they did a quick assist, which is Windows built-in product, and then started running PowerShell commands. Defender actually picked up saying this call came in, but and the reason why Defender picked that up, which was cool, is because this call came in. It also came in from a domain that just seems a little bit suspicious, right? Because when you make a peer-to-peer call, it's technically like a chat. It has a domain attached to it in the background. It said they started running some PowerShell scripts. This is wrong. We are
Wow.
just going to throw an alert and block this, right? Like,
Wow.
so it's not just about your files being thing, it's also about behavioral analysis. So I'm actually, I have goosebumps when I'm telling the story because it's so cool. It is
That is pretty
absolutely
cool.
cool that it actually does that, where it's actually looking at Teams call coming into your endpoint and using quick assist, and the user then running PowerShell scripts where this user has no business running the PowerShell scripts. So Defender correlated all that stuff and said, there's a problem. Let me block this and let me alert the SOC. And then SOC got involved. They looked at all the processes and things like that. And then the device got isolated and all that good stuff. Like, it's that cool, right? Like, people don't
And a model
understand.
like,
Yeah,
yeah, and the thing that you're describing there is something that would break if you insert, third-party tools in
absolutely.
there, right?
Absolutely. It would. And guess what? No other tool has a capability of doing that. Because you know what? Here's the thing. No knock on CrowdStrike. CrowdStrike, let's just be honest, pound for pound, CrowdStrike is the gold standard for
Mhm.
EDR. I'm not gonna lie. However, where CrowdStrike fails is it doesn't have integrations into your Microsoft 365 tenant using Defender for Office 365, or your identity using Defender for Identity. Where Defender takes the cake is it integrates with the signals that it's getting from all across your infrastructure, because it's technically one product, just different licenses, and then makes that decision based on what it's seeing in real time. Versus you would, when you're in a CrowdStrike environment, you're going to have CrowdStrike as your EDR, you're going to have Proofpoint as your spam filtering solution, and then maybe something else to maybe Okta to manage your identity, whatever it is, right? None of those things talk to each other. And in an SMB world, that's way too many. That's way too many third-party products to manage. Versus you can manage one using business premium license, right? So yeah, no, like when I heard that story, I was like, this is something that people don't understand, and that's how powerful that tool is, right?
That
That is a
is
pretty cool one.
Yeah,
I like
that
that.
is
yeah, it
mind-blowingly
is.
good.
It
But
is.
but you guys keep mentioning business premium. So these features are not available on business standard, right?
No, no, they're not.
Okay.
So the
Okay.
difference between business premium and business standard is that all the security features are part of business premium. Business standard actually doesn't even have Entra ID P1, so it's just productivity, right? So it's a nice starter SKU, but business premium is where you start getting the rich functionality. I compare business premium to the E5 SKU. It's an E5 light in my opinion, right? So
But it's
which is
but
a big
it's
statement,
but
right?
it's
So
built and priced for SMBs, right? So you're
it,
getting enterprise grade security and capabilities at an SMB price
SM
point.
$23.10 last I checked in US. So yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
Wow. That's well worth it in my view, right?
yeah.
Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
great. And if I can just say something on that point of what
Absolutely.
you're kind of, and probably you're going to be going into this, right? But that is really the question for our customers, especially in the SMB space, right? Is what do you already have that you don't realize, right? And so when you talk about that business premium SKU, you just think it's Office and Teams, but it's already fully securely stacked. So you're going to get that identity protection, you're going to get that device management, you're going to get that email and collaboration, endpoint security. So really, it's not a gap in solution. It's really that activation gap of what they already own. And so probably, hopefully, that's carrying into what you're going to talk to about us next. But that really is where the gap is in these SMB customers. I know Crucial Logic is doing a great job to lower that gap, but that's really kind of where we see a lot of the misses in the SMB space.
Yeah.
Yeah, and very fair point. And often when I talk to customers, um, they don't realize what they've signed up for. There's so much un, un, unrealized value that's just latent, waiting to be configured and turned on
Right.
in the right manner.
Yeah.
But it goes back to the point, our customers don't need to be the technology experts. It's the reason they have partners like Crucial Logics to help them do that at
Right.
significantly lower price points, much faster, and ultimately
Yep.
it's protecting them from potentially being at the hands and mercy of malicious
Yeah.
attempts.
Absolutely.
So thank you guys for doing that. It's an important piece of work. So we've got two more topics that I'd love to chat about, right? The first one is Intune. What does that mean? What is Intune, and why is it important?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, Intune is your device management tool. So probably most of us have experienced something in a business where maybe a laptop gets lost, or more likely, your phone gets lost. When that happens, in most cases, people have company email on their phone. They have company email on their laptop, company files on their laptop. If that device is lost and it's unmanaged, then your exposure, or your company's exposure, depends entirely on whether that device itself is secure. Does it have some sort of disk encryption? Is there some sort of login protection? Things like that. With Intune, you don't have to rely on an assumption. You can go in, you can remotely wipe the device, you can revoke sign-ins to that device. You can ensure that only devices that are compliant with policies are able to reconnect to your system. So even if the device is physically lost, even if you no longer have control over it, access to company data is still going to be controlled. I'm betting Amal has an example of one that he heard last week.
No, not last week, but I think the it is Intune, in my opinion, is a security tool, and I almost tell people that I'd even if you don't have anything else, have your devices managed properly, because that is going to help, elevate your security posture so much more, right? The great part about Intune is, uh, you no longer have perimeter and firewalls as your boundary anymore, right? And it was especially true during COVID. So speaking about
Mhm.
stories, the devices that were Intune joined during COVID, and the devices that were only Active Directory joined, Intune joined devices, pure Intune joined devices, actually had their passwords updated automatically and things like that, versus the devices that were Active Directory joined, once they were outside of the environment for 90 days, the tombstone expires, and then the password expires. So now then you have a synchronization error between what's on Active Directory and what's on your device, right? Versus Intune solves for that, because Active Directory group policies only apply as long as the device is in the view of Active Directory. Versus Intune, those security policies follow that device as long as that device is connected to the internet, right? So that's the only anecdote I have, is a lot of clients lost, had unsynchronized passwords if they didn't have Intune deployed, right? So yeah.
And
I've got a
and the
story.
thing that you mentioned there, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, please.
No, I was going to say I've got a story for a change, Amal. So 3 weeks back, I was in Montreal and I had one of those Google Fold phones and I dropped it. And number one, it's very hard moving around a place that's predominantly French when you don't speak French without a phone.
Yeah.
So I had always prided myself that I had good digital habits. I didn't realize how bad my habits were until my phone broke. I'm like, I can't get anywhere. I can't order an Uber. There's no entertainment. In any event, I got back home and I picked up my old Pixel 7 and got it set up with Intune. Everything just like flowed seamlessly, right? Within 20 minutes, like everything was set up, like
Mm.
barring the performance I was getting on the more premium device, everything else worked fine. The bigger piece was this, which is the screen on that was broken. And I'm in the back of my head, I'm thinking, gosh, I'm gonna hand this in for repair. I don't want them having access to all of my sensitive information. And our great tech team that's here at the building, they were like, don't worry about it, Kree. We'll just deprovision that device. Few clicks later, done. He's like, you can
Done.
hand it over, no problem. They're not going to be able to gain access to that.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's true.
Sorry, David, you were going to say something.
Oh, no, I was just going to kind of piggyback onto what Amal was saying as far as the network perimeter, and this is really why business owners should care about the problem here, that the network perimeter is not where your risk is anymore. It's the device, it's the user, right? So your employees are accessing data from their home networks, from their mobile devices, from Starbucks, whatever. And if those devices aren't governed in some way, then that means that the data that you access through those devices isn't governed. And so that becomes a business control problem. So you have to ensure that only trusted endpoints can access sensitive information, regardless of what location they're in. We can no longer use that visual of a castle with a moat around it for our organization. Everybody's accessing stuff from everywhere, and that includes Microsoft, right?
Yeah.
It kind of completes that picture of zero trust, right? We talked about tenant hardening. Tenant hardening has those conditional access policies. One of the conditional access policy says that you have to come in from a known device, and a known device is a device that managed by Intune. So it could be your phone, it could be your laptop, it could be your iPad. It doesn't really matter, right? And that's how you now draw your extended perimeter, is that you have all those policies properly set on your tenant. You have these Intune device management policies where are you coming in from a known device? But not only that, are you coming in from a device that's compliant, which means, does it have antivirus? Was it updated with the latest patches, right? Does it follow, was it rooted? Like if you jailbreak your phone, Intune will say, yeah, the phone's rooted. It's too risky. I'm not going to allow you to come back into the environment using that phone. And that's how you establish that zero trust network. And I love to tell people that if you decide tomorrow to go to Punta Cana and you decide to take your laptop, your tenant should know you moved a location and I'm going to block you. Or if you decide that, hey, I'm going to leave my laptop at home, I'm going to log in from a hotel kiosk, the tenant should know you're coming in from a device that is not recognized by me, and I'm just going to block you completely, or I'm only going to give you read-only access and not allow you to download anything. Those are the choices you can make, and you can only make that if you have your tenant hardening and Intune properly deployed, right? So, yeah.
Wow. So I'm learning a heck of a lot here in terms of that, especially when I'm planning my next trip outside of Canada. So
You
thank
got to
you.
let your IT know that you're leaving.
Yeah,
right? So,
absolutely. All right. So we've literally got just over 2 minutes, and I want to cover a very important topic, and that's the topic of Sentinel, and that's a significant one. Sentinel's been around for a while. It's a premium, an amazing feature. Carolyn, I'm looking at you. Maybe you just want to give us a brief overview of what Sentinel is and what it can do for us.
Yeah, for sure. So I always think of Sentinel as the security command center, right? So it's kind of like you're in the control room watching all the cameras at once, right? That's looking at everything. So it's really going to be collecting data from your devices, from your identity, from your email, from your cloud apps. And then really it's going to correlate those signals. And then you can either red flag them and look at them now, or kind of save them for a little bit later to respond. But it's really going to help your teams investigate and respond faster. So really looking at and understanding incidents that are happening within your technology stack. And Dave, I don't know if you want to add anything specifically around SMB, but that's kind of the overview that I give in just a short little sentence.
Yeah, I mean, given the time that we have, I think that's a good overview. Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe you want to tell us, like, how does Sentinel catch threats that go past everything else? Like, what's its superpower?
Being able to view everything all at once, right? So it's not just looking at endpoint signal. It's not just looking at identity signal. It's correlating everything together. It's saying that the sum total of the signals that I've got indicate that such and such is happening. There's a ransomware attack. There's a brute force password attack. So it's not simply looking at a single alert as being something that you need to take action on. It pieces together multiple alerts and says, this is the overall attack that's taking place. So that's really, and then you can automate responses, right? So that's the key thing.
Okay, so it's then able to eliminate things like false positives and really make sense of everything that's happening all at once, and really snapping into like a single view of truth.
I mean, here's an example. Like in your house, you have monitoring stations, monitoring systems, and you have your cameras and things like that. So imagine yesterday you saw a guy lurking in your backyard, right? And today you saw someone pelt a stone at your window, right? Those are two completely unrelated events, right? But but when you correlate them, you're like, hey, am I being targeted somehow, right? Because I just saw this suspicious activity yesterday, something more suspicious today. What's gonna happen? And that's what Sentinel does. It takes two completely unrelated events and correlates them and say, you maybe want to pay attention to this because something happened on your firewall while this computer was trying to log into a IP address in Russia, right? Like two very different events. So without a correlation engine like Sentinel, there's no way you're gonna keep tabs on those kind of events because there's so many logs that are just fed in to your SOC and your IT teams that it's impossible, humanly impossible to correlate them. So that's what really Sentinel does for you, right? So
Amazing,
yeah.
amazing. Another pretty powerful product. And Amal, just to remind us, that also comes with business premium?
So Sentinel doesn't come with business premium, but
Ah,
what Sentinel relies on is, so Sentinel is not like it's an extra license, so to speak. What Sentinel relies on is signals from Defender and all these other signals, right? Sentinel relies on this log analytics engine that you do have to subscribe to within Azure, where it ingests logs, right? And then Sentinel picks it up, right? So it's a separate product. It's not like there's an additional cost, unless I'm wrong, David and Carolyn. There's no additional cost for Sentinel other than the log ingestion fees that Microsoft charges based on where the logs are coming from, right? Like
okay.
Microsoft logs in itself are quite cheap. If you want to talk about third-party logs, there's a fee that's associated with it, right? So yeah,
Okay. Well,
yeah. So
thanks.
it's
Thanks for
technically
clarifying
free.
that. Yeah. So thank you for clarifying that, because sometimes customers go into and they look at what's included in business
Yeah,
premium. They're like, oh, I don't see Sentinel in there, so this is
yeah.
something we've got to buy. And there you go. So
Just
for
have to enable.
approximately $25 overall, you're pretty ticked and tied together with the right value
Configurations.
realization partner,
Yeah.
right?
Yes, absolutely,
Okay. Well,
absolutely.
that brings us to the end of our webinar, folks. Thank you so much. Thank you, Amal. Thank you, David, and thank you,
Thank you
Caroline.
so much.
All
Yeah,
right.
Thank
thanks.
you.
Have a good one.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone. Bye.